And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, December 13th. I'm your host for today's program, and today we go to the Shoshone Bannock Reservation at Fort Hall, Idaho, and talk with correspondent Mark Trahant about some of the political events around the world and how they impact Indian country. Mark Trahant, thanks for joining with us again from the Fort Hall Indian Reservation there on the Native News Update today.
Thank you, Paul.
I want to talk just about some of the things going on that I've been reading about. It seems like we've got a lot going on, but let's start with this. I'm reading about a Gallup poll that says 76% of people in the United States think that everybody in Congress ought to be voted out of office for a change and changed over. Seems like there's a lot of frustration going on up there, and the latest issue is payroll tax cut. What do we know about that issue? And we'll go on from there.
Well, for most of us, payroll taxes are incredibly important. We pay more in payroll taxes in general than we do in income taxes. Yet income taxes kind of defines the debate. Excuse me. Today, Senator Harry Reid on the Senate side, the majority leader, basically told the Democratic members of the conference committee, which are trying to reconcile the budget for next year, that they should not reach a deal because he wants to keep the House in session. The House has decided to throw up a sales tax reduction linked to the XL pipeline, pass it, and then leave town. And their idea is if they leave town, there's no way they can alter the deal. So Harry Reid is countering that by saying, the sales tax deal is going to come before the budget, so you can't leave town until we get this deal done. So they're saying he's holding it hostage, but I think it's a very pretty shrewd strategy.
Well, isn't it getting to the point that the politics of trying to get one thing is forcing the president and senators on both parties? It's getting to be a convoluted process. For example, you talked about this XL Energy project, which is highly opposed by native tribes in certain parts of the country, Montana, South Dakota, or someplace where it's going to run through. They actually went to Obama and said, please don't let that go through.
Right.
Here, all of a sudden, my understanding is that a addendum or a component of this bill continuing the payroll tax cut says that the president has to sign off on it positively within 60 days. Is that your understanding?
Right. The Republican plan says they want this deal done, and they tie it to the sales tax, payroll tax cut, and say if you don't play our game, we're not going to play yours, even though the two are not related at all. They say that they're trying to fight for the jobs that will be created by the pipeline, but most of the studies, the data shows that it's not going to create all that many jobs.
Right. Plus, my understanding is Obama said he would veto a bill that contained that in it, and so is that part of the reason that Congress wants the congressmen want to pass something and then get the hell out of town in case he vetoes it, and blame the president for not giving the payroll tax cut?
Right. But they won't even get that far because it will not get through the Senate like that. So The House is just deluding itself if they think they're going to play that card. I mean, the one thing is that the last few times the Democrats have held really weak hands in terms of if you do this, then we'll do that. This time it's the flip side. The biggest tax cut, the Bush tax cuts, the Democrats don't have to do anything. If they don't do a damn thing, they expire. And so they've got this huge hole card to play that's just putting a lot of pressure on Republicans to do something.
And without the Republicans doing something, this would be one of the major tax increases to have been applied since the Tea Party took office.
Right, but increase is kind of, it would return us to levels we'd been paying before.
Right. Okay. Got it. It's kind of like the earned income credit in Wisconsin. Literally, the governor says he hasn't raised taxes, but what he's done is reduce the earned income credit in the state of Wisconsin, which essentially becomes an increase in the amount of tax you're paying to the state are not getting back or something like
Oh, sure.
that. So people playing the games all the way around. My understanding is someone offered $1 million to Newt Gingrich to drop out of the race. That wasn't Donald Trump, was it?
I don't know, but Newt's stirring up a lot of really deep animosity on the conservative side, from people who don't believe that he's really a conservative.
And people don't believe that Mitt Romney is a conservative as well. So you got two people running as conservatives, but nobody in the Republican Party actually believes that.
And for different reasons. The reason some people don't like Newt is it goes back to his days as Speaker, where they see him as another big government guy that just liked to get on the dole. With Mitt, it's more conviction of values, and it's a kind of a different take. But the Tea Party folks that do like Newt particularly like him because he throws out wild statements that are incendiary in nature, and it just kind of appeals to their, I think, baser instincts.
Yeah, basic instincts. Perhaps my understanding is Donald Trump has finally dropped out of this debate that was supposed to take place somewhere. So it's one interesting thing after another. How does the foreign policy having to do with Iran's rattling impact Indian country? We've got a lot of native soldiers in the military. They're saber rattling, saying they're going to close down this strait, one of the most important oil corridors in the world. What are we facing on that end?
Well, and in Iran's defense, that's their territorial waters. So it's a little different situation. If someone tried to close down somewhere between Florida, I think we'd have the same reaction.
Or Panama closing the Panama Canal Zone.
Right. We have really had, I think, an unfortunate missed opportunity with Iran a number of times. Iran was one of the countries that reached out to the United States almost immediately after 9/11, provided intelligence, was involved, and we had an opportunity to turn them into an ally, maybe not a close ally, but somebody we could work with. And it just didn't fit the rhetoric. And so first the Bush administration and now the Obama administration has done everything they can to go back to this Cold War stance with Iran, which is too bad because they're a big player in the region. And we had an opportunity, I think, an opening.
It comes down to our energy policy. Do native nations hold a key in energy development? I mean, number one, we seem to teeter on the edge of being overly conservative, having to do with environmental impacts, and yet so much of the resources are on reservations land. Navajo country, Fort Belknap in the Dakotas, Montana is pumping more oil, my understanding, out of Indian country than ever before amongst some of these reservations. Do we hold a key to the energy policy in the United States, or is it simply something where it says we've got to learn how to consume less and less as well?
Well, I'm much more on the latter side of that debate. I think we need to consume less and less, and I think we need to change the way we consume. I don't think there's enough oil in Indian country or in the United States, for that matter, to satisfy the current way we use oil. We need to shift dramatically. Some of it would be just a reduction in use. You know, it's interesting, since the recession hit, and I think it's actually now a change, is our driving habits. We're all driving less, and we're doing so in a pretty significant way. And if you could just increase that by another 10%, you could get to a lot of the oil needs you have just by doing less. I think there's also great opportunity. I was reading about and talking to an engineer about a crop that looks like corn. It's about 12 feet tall, grows remarkably fast. It's used for biomass. But the interesting thing about it is that it really likes toxic land, and it seems to feed off of that. And then you can turn it into an energy product that you can grow over and over and over. One of the downsides for industry using it is that it's, quote, labor intensive, unquote. But for Indian country, that's a good thing. I mean, that means jobs, doing things like baling hay, and I mean, the kinds of things that people do anyway.
Right. Plenty of employment opportunities there to be able to do something with it. So maybe there's some answers in looking at some of the wisdom of native tribes and how they build and how they conduct themselves. Certainly, I know there's some windfalls for some of these tribes because of the price of the barrel, but I think we can't make the same mistake because someday that's going to be running out.
Right.
What else do we got going on in the political field? We've got primaries coming up in Ohio.
Iowa in 3 weeks.
Iowa in 3 weeks. And is it going to be narrowed down? Are we going to come out with 3 or 4 top vote getters on the Republican ticket? Nobody's going to challenge Obama.
No. It could. I think if not Iowa, right after it's New Hampshire, and that's when you should start to get a narrow. But one thing that's really important to remember is that the Republicans changed the rules, and it used to be that they would have a lot of winner-take-all primaries. So after the first few rounds, somebody like John McCain had so many delegates committed that they couldn't lose. And so it really was over at that point. This will not be the case this time. It's a percentage basis like the Democrats do. And so if Ron Paul stays in the race, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, and keeps getting his core 20% of people who will follow him anywhere, you could have the Republican candidates have to go to the convention before there's an answer on who their nominee is. And if that happens, delegates are only committed to the first round. After the first round, they can vote for anyone they want. And so you could conceivably get a candidate who's not yet on the ballot.
It might be the what they would call a plurality ballot. The idea of multiple votes in elections may be exactly what the Republican Party will end up with, that no one comes in with a clear majority, and there's a lot of horse trading to find a candidate.
Right. So you could bring in a Jeb Bush or a Chris Christie or somebody who's kind of outside at this point and have them be nominated by the convention, which hasn't happened in a long, long time.
It has happened, though, in history, hasn't it? We got to go refresh our memory. Do you remember which one it was? Because I seem to remember something like that happened. But
it's been a long time. Kennedy was several ballots in before he won the nomination, and there was a lot of horse trading there, but he was already a candidate. It'd be interesting to see who was the first non-candidate.
Well, we'll take a look at that. That's right. I'll go back and refresh my history a little bit. Mark, it's been good talking to you. Anything else going on we need to know about?
That's the big one. The payroll tax cut is really important in Indian country, and I hope it's one we pay attention to.
You got a plastic or a real tree in your living room?
Oh, we got a real tree.
Who's going to do Santa Claus this year?
We'll see. I'm not sure.
Take care, Mark. Thanks for joining with us.
Okay.
Bye-bye. And that is another roundup of news from Indian country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you for joining with us and come back again soon. Miigwech.